Welcome back to Learn English Through Global Affairs, the podcast where we explore major world events while helping you improve your English. I'm your host, David, and today we're diving into a blockbuster story from May 2025, President Donald Trump's visit to Saudi Arabia, where he secured a massive $600 billion investment deal. To unpack this historic trip, we're joined by Dr. Fatima Al-Harbi, a Middle East policy expert and professor of international relations. Welcome, Fatima.
Thank you, David. It's a pleasure to be here. This visit is a big deal, and I'm excited to break it down with you and help our listeners learn some new English terms along the way.
Absolutely. It's a perfect mix of global affairs and language learning. Let's start with the basics. Can you give us a quick overview of what happened during Trump's visit to Saudi Arabia on May 13, 2025?
Sure. On May 13th, President Trump landed in Riyadh for the first stop of his Middle East tour, greeted with lavish ceremonies. Think Arabian horses, sword dancers, and a lavender carpet, which is a rare honor in Saudi culture. The centerpiece was a $600 billion investment commitment from Saudi Arabia to the U.S., covering AI, defense, energy, and infrastructure. Trump also signed a $142 billion arms deal, the largest in U.S. history, and announced a surprise decision to lift sanctions on Syria after meeting Syria's new interim president, Ahmed al-Sharaa. It was a whirlwind of deals and diplomacy.
Wow, $600 billion is hard to wrap your head around. And that arms deal, $142 billion. It sounds like a movie. For our English learners, let's clarify a term here: investment commitment. Can you explain what that means?
Good catch, David. An investment commitment is a promise to spend money on projects or businesses over time, like building factories or buying technology. In this case, Saudi Arabia pledged $600 billion to support U.S. industries, but it's not cash handed over instantly. It's a long-term plan. For learners, think of commitment as a strong promise, like committing to study English every day.
Great analogy. So, why did Saudi Arabia make such a huge commitment? What's in it for them?
Saudi Arabia's Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman, or MBS, is pushing Vision 2030, a plan to diversify their economy away from oil. They want to be a global leader in AI, tech, and energy. By investing in the U.S., they get access to cutting-edge technology, like NVIDIA and AMD chips for AI data centers through their startup Humane. The $142 billion arms deal also strengthens their military, especially amid tensions with Iran. Plus, it's about building a strong alliance with Trump, who they see as a reliable partner.
That makes sense. But let's talk about the optics. This visit was flashy, right? I heard about camels and chandeliers. How does all that pageantry play into the deals?
Oh, it was over the top. Saudi Arabia rolled out the red, or rather lavender, carpet. Trump's motorcade had a cavalry of Arabian horses, and he was feted at gilded palaces. This pageantry, another great word for learners, meaning grand ceremonies, signals respect and sets a positive tone for negotiations. For MBS, it's also about showing Saudis that he can attract a powerful leader like Trump, boosting his domestic image. But it's not just show, it's strategic. The glitz makes the deals feel historic, which Trump loves.
Trump does love a big stage. For our listeners, optics refers to how something looks to the public, like the image or vibe of an event. Speaking of image, some critics say this visit glossed over Saudi Arabia's controversies, like human rights issues or the 2018 Khashoggi murder. How did that play out?
You're right, it's a sore point. Trump's warm embrace of MBS, calling him a great leader, drew criticism, especially from 9/11 families who remember Saudi links to the attackers. Posts on X show outrage, with some calling it a betrayal of never forget. Trump sidestepped these issues, focusing on business and saying past horrors are in the past. Critics argue this prioritizes money over morals, but supporters say it's pragmatic. Saudi Arabia's wealth and strategic location make it a key ally. It's a classic debate, values versus interests.
That's a tough one. Let's dive into another big moment, the decision to lift sanctions on Syria. For learners, sanctions are penalties, like trade bans, to pressure a country. Why did Trump make this move, and why in Riyadh?
The Syria announcement was a shocker. Trump said he lifted sanctions at the request of MBS and Turkey's President Erdogan, aiming to help Syria's new leader, Ahmed al-Sharaa, rebuild after years of civil war. By announcing it in Riyadh, Trump gave Saudi Arabia a diplomatic win, as they're keen to influence Syria's future and counter Iran's presence. It's also a signal that Trump's shifting U.S. policy, less intervention, more deal-making. The standing ovation from Saudi elites shows how much they valued this move.
It's like a chess game with billion-dollar pieces. How does this fit into the broader Middle East picture? I heard Trump also talked about Iran and Israel.
Exactly. Trump's Middle East tour, Saudi Arabia, Qatar, UAE, was about reshaping alliances. He hinted at a historic nuclear deal with Iran, saying he wants it quickly, but warned of a violent course if it fails. On Israel, he didn't visit, but urged Saudi Arabia to join the Abraham Accords for normalization, though MBS insists on Palestinian statehood first. These moves show Trump's aiming big, maybe even dreaming of a Nobel Peace Prize, but the region's complexities make it a long shot.
Nobel Prize ambitions. That's Trump. Let's talk money again. The White House claims Trump secured over $2 trillion in Gulf deals, including this $600 billion from Saudi Arabia. But I've read some deals might be inflated or recycled. What's the real story?
Great question. The $600 billion figure is eye-catching, but there's skepticism. Reuters estimates the actual value of specific deals across the Gulf tour at $730 billion, far less than $2 trillion. Many are memorandums of understanding, non-binding agreements, like a handshake, not a contract. For learners, non-binding means it's not legally required. Some deals, like Boeing jet orders, build on existing talks from Biden's era. Saudi Arabia's strapped budget, with moderate oil prices, also raises doubts about how fast they can fund $600 billion. Still, even $300 billion would be massive.
So it's big, but maybe not that big. Another term for learners. Inflated means exaggerated, like making something sound bigger than it is. Who benefits most from these deals in the U.S.?
U.S. companies are the big winners. NVIDIA and AMD will supply hundreds of thousands of AI chips to Saudi's Humane startup, offsetting losses from China's market. Boeing scored jet orders, and Amazon's AWS will build an AI zone in Saudi Arabia, training 100,000 locals. Defense firms like Lockheed Martin benefit from the $142 billion arms deal. But there's a catch. Critics say Trump's family and allies, like Jared Kushner, whose firm got $2 billion from Saudi's wealth fund in 2022, may also profit, raising ethical concerns.
That's a red flag. For learners, a red flag is a warning sign of trouble. How are everyday people affected? Are there downsides for Americans or Saudis?
For Americans, these deals could create jobs in tech, defense, and manufacturing, but benefits may take years to trickle down. Higher oil prices, if OPEC doesn't lower them as Trump demanded, could hit consumers. In Saudi Arabia, the average person might not see much from the $600 billion, as Vision 2030 projects like robot-served cities often prioritize elites. Plus, Saudis borrowing to fund these deals could strain their budget, affecting public services. Both sides are betting on long-term gains, but short-term pain is possible.
It's a high-stakes gamble. What about the global impact? How are other countries reacting?
The Gulf deals ripple worldwide. China's worried about losing AI and tech influence as Saudi Arabia and UAE pivot to U.S. chips. Iran's nervous about Saudi's military boost and Syria's reintegration, which could weaken Tehran's regional clout. The EU's watching closely, as Gulf investments in the U.S. might divert capital from Europe. Qatar and UAE's own deals, $1.2 trillion and $1.4 trillion, respectively, show the Gulf's betting big on America, which could shift global economic power. It's a new chapter in geopolitics.
A new chapter indeed. Let's zoom out. What's the best-case scenario for this $600 billion deal and Trump's Saudi partnership?
Best case, the investments spark innovation and jobs in both countries. Saudi Arabia becomes a tech hub, reducing oil dependence, while U.S. firms like Nvidia and Amazon thrive. The Syria sanctions lift stabilizes the region, and maybe Trump's Iran talks yield a nuclear deal. Stronger U.S.-Saudi ties could also pave the way for broader Middle East peace, though that's optimistic. For learners, optimistic means hopeful, looking on the bright side.
And the worst-case scenario?
Worst case, the deals fizzle due to Saudi's budget constraints or non-binding agreements falling apart. Ethical concerns, like Trump family profits, fuel distrust in the U.S. Saudi's arms buildup escalates tensions with Iran, risking conflict. The Syria move could backfire if al-Shara's government fails, destabilizing the region further. Globally, a U.S. Gulf economic bloc might alienate China or Europe, sparking trade wars. It's a lot of ifs.
That's a roller coaster. One last term for learners. Fizzle means to fail or fade out weakly, like a firework that doesn't pop. Any wild cards that could change the game?
Definitely. Oil prices are one. If OPEC cuts them as Trump wants, it could ease global inflation, but hurt Saudi's funding for these deals. Another is AI. If Saudi's humane startup makes a breakthrough, it could shift tech power dynamics. Finally, public opinion matters. If Americans or Saudis feel shortchanged, political pressure could force leaders to rethink the partnership. For learners, shortchanged means getting less than you expected.
So many moving parts. Fatima, this has been a masterclass in global affairs and English vocabulary. Thanks for breaking it all down.
My pleasure, David. It's a complex topic, but I hope our listeners learned some new words and insights. Keep practicing English, everyone.
Absolutely. For our listeners, check out our website for episode transcripts and vocabulary guides to master terms like sanctions, investment commitment, and pageantry. That's all for episode 3 of Learn English Through Global Affairs. Tune in next week for another dive into the world's biggest stories. I'm David, signing off.